Introducing NASM 1, NASM's ultimate membership program, where the NASM community helps each other build incredible careers, transforming the lives of the clients we inspire and supporting each other as we grow and succeed. NASM 1 is best-in-class tools, cutting-edge certifications, confidence in your craft, and everything you do as a personal trainer made easy.
You're listening to Random Fit with hosts Wendy Batts and Ken Miller, winner of a Gold Markham Award for Digital Media.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Random Fit with myself, Wendy Batts, and co-host Ken Miller. Ken, how are you today?
I'm great, Wendy. How you doing? You're looking good.
Oh, thanks. I am great. And I find when you said that we were going to talk about orienteering, I was like, I have no idea what this is. I was like really ready to dive deep into the conversation because I had to do a lot of research to find out a little bit about this topic. So I'm really thankful that you brought it up. And why don't you start us off and tell us what orienteering is?
Well, orienteering, Wendy.
Orienteering? I'm not saying it wrong? Oh, geez. Orienteering.
I know. Anytime you add anything more than 3 syllables,
It's
you gotta,
past. Are you
yeah,
saying that that's too much for me? Is that
you
where
gotta,
we're
you gotta,
going?
you gotta focus a little bit.
Focus.
But with with orienteering, I remember I had actually a couple clients over the years that were involved with orienteering from a recreational standpoint. So basically, it's an outdoor sport where you have the outdoors, obviously, but you're going from, and it's different for the different areas in the world, as this is definitely a global sport. But basically, you have a map, a compass, and your trail shoes, and you just go out there and you run. So uh, basically, it combines navigation. There's a lot of social interaction because you can work in teams as well. But basically, you go from landmark to landmark, and depending on the difficulty or the challenge or the level of competition of orienteering, you're going from landmark to landmark. You have to navigate through terrain. And the idea here is that if you're really going about it from the sports standpoint, is that you're trying to do this in the shortest amount of time possible against the competitors in your field. So years ago, I had a client, or actually a couple clients over the years that were involved in it, and they said it was the funnest thing ever. So they had a great time with it.
Yeah, well,
I never got involved. I never got involved with it, but they said they had a heck of a time doing it.
I will say that I would be terrible at this because my sense of direction, when I'm going forward, that's always north. To the left is always west. To the right is always east, and behind me is always south. So
Hmm.
it doesn't matter where I'm standing. That's how my world, like my brain thinks. So if I had to actually just be dropped off in the middle of nowhere and try to use a map, I mean, if I don't have Google Maps or something with my phone telling me which way to turn, I would be a lost soul for sure. But let's talk about the history of it. So the history of this particular sport, it actually originated with the military in Scandinavia in the early 19th centuries or century, geez. And then it became more of a competitive sport in 1919 in Sweden. And so I'm like, okay, they have this thing called the father of orienteering, and his name is Ernest Killander. And he was the one that actually decided to make this a sport because he found it fascinating that, like you said, on a social standpoint, people had to come together because there's no signage of anything. They really have a strong belief. Anyone that's a competitor, they're all about nature. So their motto itself, which I like the motto, it's take nothing away, leave nothing behind. And the purpose is make sure you pick up your trash, you don't step on the flowers, and you don't leave a footprint in nature. It's all about you just navigating through the course, and you want to try to end up being the first one at the finish line, wherever that may be.
Yeah. So from that's definitely a sport that evolved out of necessity, right? Because
Yeah.
you don't want your unit to go out there and where are they? right? So if you, if you definitely take that into consideration, it is a sport that was built out of necessity. But one of the things that I got, Wendy, from this is just as physically and as mentally challenging as this sport is, and it is a sport, and it's just amazing, Wendy, as we dive into different activities and we get out of the U.S. Again, we have a bias towards what we see in front of us every day. But when you look at the what's out there, and and when you read this information on orienteering, it's like, why don't we do more of this? Because it's so interesting that, Wendy, I looked up local orienteering groups, right? Because I, not just for myself but for my kids, I think these are useful skills to have if you're out in the woods. The last thing, I mean, and there's a lot of nature out there, right? The national parks, a lot of great stuff out there, but I think when you look at the sport of orienteering and what you need to be able to do to be successful at it, or actually even be decent at it, you have to know how a compass works. I mean, how many kids know how to do that? Or even, without Google Maps, Wendy, it just tells you, okay, just go this way, just go that way. But being able to use a map, you remember the Thomas Guide,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay, I'm in B4. Where's B4? Okay, that's right. But when you're talking about orientation, you have to be able to use those. I would, after looking at it, it's a life skill. It's
Hmm.
a life skill that I think we could all benefit from. So plan, picture, and direction are the basic orienteering skills when you want to look at, okay, where are we? And, where are we going to go? Where are we headed? You have to point yourself in the right direction, and plan, picture, and direction. If you have those three things, then you basically understand what the sport is about. But I guess over time, this is what skills you're trying to hone.
Well, and I was like, it can't be that big, because I'd never heard about it. I did not know anything about it until you had said it. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they actually hold one of the biggest meets that they have. They hold this every single year in Scandinavia. And it started back in 1965. And it attracts more than, you ready for this? 15,000 competitors every single year. I'm like, wow, okay, way bigger than I thought. And, with 15,000 people, at least I have someone I can follow maybe, because
Hmm.
again, if I'm holding
Yeah.
this map, I'm going to be, I'm telling you guys, I'm very challenged in that specific area of direction.
Yeah. I think this is one of those things that we research, Wendy, that we both have to do. We both have to do, just
I'm
because
all about it. Let's do it.
there's so much reading. I mean, there's a lot of websites, but again, I just researched what local orienteering clubs there are in my area. And I encourage you, as a listener of the Random Fit podcast, that if you're listening to us to this point, regarding orienteering, I mean, the title is what it is, right? This is nature's gym. You are out there. You are going out there. I think you just have to experience this, just as I do, and you're gonna have to hold me accountable, or you don't hold me accountable, because I am generally interested in getting out there and trying this out. Just it was just so interesting, the fitness aspect. So when you're navigating out the outdoors, you're now have to run, right? This is a timed sport if you're competing at that level. But that's where the fitness side definitely comes into play, from the standpoint that you have to know where you're going and then give it all you got when it comes to managing the terrain. So from an exercise standpoint, as we've talked about on other episodes, Wendy, I'm always looking for other ways to challenge myself. So from the health aspect of it, it gives you something to train for. So if you have clients, like I have clients who like to run, maybe even occasional trail run, or an obstacle course race, which we've also touched on that topic on Random Fit. This might be a great way to augment your outdoor training and still get the cardio the cardio component to it.
Yes, indeed. And today on Random Fit, Ken Miller and myself, Wendy Batts, are talking about navigating nature's gym, and we're talking about orienteering. Orienteering. I'm going to say it over and over and over again. And, Ken, I think you bring up a really important point, because as I was researching and learning more about it, I'm like, what, can anybody do this? And the answer to that is yes. And there are different skill levels, just as any other sport, where if you're just starting out, some of the courses and terrain and your ability, they have kind of like easy, moderate, and hard. So it's not like when you first go into this that you're going to be doing some extreme hikes and you're going to be going long distances. They do have some shorter courses that you can do based on what it is that you're going to do. Plus, one of the main reasons that this has been such a growing sport is because you can do this as a family. So if you have younger children, they may not be able to go as long as someone like myself or you can, because you have to think, you're walking, you're jogging, there are, the terrain that you're going to be crossing. You're going to be having to think about a lot of different aspects on the physical side of you, not just cardiovascularly, because you have to have the endurance, but muscularly as well. And I think, if you are going to get yourself into this type of sport, you definitely want to train yourself accordingly, because you want to make sure that you've got strong ankles, that your ankles are in good positioning. You've got good range of motion, but the muscles that protect that joint are able to go into different directions, because it's not just a flat surface like you're walking on the street. You are in nature. So you've got that. You're crossing over logs. You're jumping over, walking through a river and different types of water. So it's fascinating looking at the different courses. And I don't know if you did that, Ken, but I'm like, man, that really does look pretty fun.
Well, that was why I had those two clients, because they were training for this sport. So the ankle mobility that you bring up, Wendy, that's one of those conditions. I mean, a lot of people that, if you're a business professional with fixed soled shoes, you're behind the desk all day, ankle mobility, hip mobility, one of those things that, tend to go down over time. So those things are affected by the seated posture, especially for longer days, and if you travel, even more so. So that was one of the big concerns. So you're talking about the ankle mobility as you're crossing creeks, jumping over stumps, maneuvering the terrain. Mobility was not, it wasn't just conditioning. Conditioning is important, but actual mobility to be able to take high steps, jump down, and to zigzag, climb, and descend. Those were all the things that we had to work on, because this person wanted to get better. And when they evaluated where physically they needed more help, it was actually having the hip mobility to climb, descend, zigzag, all of that good stuff. But
Yeah.
it's just like with most other people from a conditioning standpoint. Not only are we looking at the heart and lungs, but if you're off road, you're on trail, there are more physical demands there than somebody who's just running on the street or the treadmill. So easier to challenge the heart and lungs that way. But from an orienteering or a purposeful goal, like being able to maneuver terrain, there's a lot more demand on the body, and you have to train accordingly. But
Well, and you don't want to forget about weight management. I mean, think about the amount of calories that you're burning. And so if you do want to drop some weight, you want to be outside, this could be an incredible thing for you to look into if that interests you. But I think on a strength side, it's really important too, when we're talking about hip mobility, also think about the lower back and the shoulders, because some people do wear a backpack, and if you're going to be going for longer distances, you need to carry your water, or even if it's an overnight type orienteering, you've got to think about what you need to survive over however many days you're going to do it, or is it just a day competition. So I think you make it whatever you want it to be, and you can find courses that are going to allow you to go in to your ability of what you want to get out of it. But when we talk about the cardiovascular side, we're talking about weight management, we're talking about mobility. Balance is also going to be important, because there are certain courses where you're walking on top of logs in order to get to the other side, like instead of crossing over a bridge or crossing over a log. And so balance is also going to be key. So when we talk about all, like including everything into your programming, it's not, when we talk about dailies or activities of daily living, this is also going to be activities of what you need for the sport. So you get what you train for. So you want to make sure that you're working on all components of your fitness aspect when you're in the gym.
The biggest part that I saw, Wendy, in putting it all together, as you said, is that there are different levels of competition. But there are also introductory classes, there are introductory workshops that we'll discuss some of the physical side of things. Say they don't want you just jumping into it and going into one of the longer races, because it's not just the technical side of the sport that you have to look at, but it's also the skill set. So as you are building yourself up physically, you are also having an opportunity over time to build up your skill set on navigation, map reading, the technical side of that, identifying the signs and signatures of where you are. So the technical side, you've done on another podcast, Wendy, cognitive training. So I can't think of a more applicable sport that combines the ability to think, or to think well under physical duress. So that's another thing that's out there as far as what you can look at from your indoor conditioning to complement your outdoor competition, is the fact that you want to challenge yourself mentally as well as physically, so you have the wherewithal to, once you're out in the field and you're at an event, to be able to process thought and think logically when your heart rate's high, maybe a little dehydrated, maybe a little hungry, depending on how well you've prepared. But the aspect of being able to technically make decisions while under physical duress, that's the other part of the training that I don't think gets tapped into all that often. More so now than a couple years ago, but when you look at mentally as well as physically challenging yourself at the same time, those are two parts of training that need to be considered and implemented.
And there was a ton of information on that it is a mental game. And when they say it's a game, because you're starting at this one point and you have to learn to navigate yourself. I said this earlier, want to keep in mind, there's not like signs like go this way or go that way. You're trying to figure out what way you need to go. And, I think it's important to think too, you are stressing the mind, you are getting tired, you are getting hungry. But one of the things that I liked about not just all the stuff that we're talking about on the physical side was the fact that it really is about team building. I mean, you can do these solo. So some people like to do it and they like to put themselves through that one-on-one. They're in competition with themselves, and they especially on the longer courses, when people don't want to do that. Some people do different legs where they meet at a certain point and then they switch. But one of the things that I liked was you start building a team, and then you start saying, okay, who's going to be kind of the leader? Who's the navigator? Who's the one that's going to help with the planning? Who's the one that's going to make sure that these friendships are evolving and that you're showing up for practices? Because like you said, you have to go through and kind of work your way into some of this longer duration type orienteering competitions and events. So I liked the social part, because I mean, that's one of the reasons I play tennis. I like to play doubles more than I like to play singles. And it's not that I can't handle double or singles, because I'm the one that's responsible for winning and losing.
Right.
But I like the social aspect. I think, we need that. And I think it's one of those things that I look forward to, especially when I really like playing with a particular partner. So
So I think Wendy, when it comes to orienteering, again, you're here listening to us, Wendy Batts and myself, Ken Miller, here on Random Fit, and we're talking about navigating nature's gym. And when it comes to orienteering, if you haven't researched it, research it. See what's available to you. Like I said, there are. I looked up orienteering for my local area. So in the Oakland, San Francisco Bay Area, there's a ton of options as far as introductory classes, which I highly encourage looking into, because as I've read through websites, there are classes going on basically all the time. At some location, there is a class going on, or there's something that you can talk to, social groups that you can get involved with. but they'll tell you what equipment you need, who you can do this with, the expected level of challenge. So research that for your own local area, because there are a lot of options. And what I'm looking at is, okay, what are the easiest places I can get involved with? And there were a ton of options, and definitely a lot of family friendly options as well. As you said, I have to think about, okay, what's the least common denominator physically? Well, that's going to be my youngest. So what can he stand? What can he do that, he's not going to ask for? Are we almost done?
Yeah.
Are we going to go home soon? Right. So
How much longer? How much longer?
how much longer? How much farther we got to go?
Right. Exactly.
You better figure out where we are first.
Exactly. Well, I think that's the key takeaway. Remember, the three major skills when you're going into this is you want to plan, you want to have a picture and direction. So those are the three things. But on the physical side, make sure if you are going to get involved in this, that you think about your programming, that you've got good flexibility and mobility within the joints, especially at the foot and ankle and the hip, and your shoulders and neck, especially if you're going to be backpacking. I think it's very important too on an activation side that you've got the right muscles firing at the right time. So you think about doing exercises that's going to increase your strength, add speed, agility, and quickness, because you're going to need to be agile. You're going to have to move in different directions. You're going to have to move in, with your foot, and, think about balance, because you're going to have to work in different environments with your foot, and making sure that your body can withstand that to reduce the chances of injury on the course. And most importantly, I think just have fun. I think that's the big thing that I got. Make it fun, make it social. This is something I think too, if you are stuck in the States and you just want to get out and you're like, time to travel, maybe if you decide you're going to go to Sweden or Scandinavia or some of these other countries, that's an amazing way to explore their nature and meet some of their people. So I think it kind of broadens our eyes to what's out there and allows us to meet new people and do new things, but also see the country or a different country in a totally different light.
Yeah, 100%. I just like it it's just something for everybody. That's why we're not talking about how long it takes, how far to go, all the demand, because there's something for everybody. So hopefully next time we talk, Wendy, we'll be able to share a story or two about our experience orienteering.
Hey, you never know.
I'm planning on. All right, so for everybody that's listened to us here on Random Fit, both Wendy Batts and I, Ken Miller, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We do encourage you to also like, follow, subscribe, download, share, and more importantly, comment. Let us know what you want us to talk about, because a topic like orienteering, that's just what we do. We're willing to talk about anything that has something to do with fitness. So until next time, everybody, take care and be well.